I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01. Use my phone. Welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. We do have two commissioners absent this evening, Commissioner Hudson and Commissioner Thompson. And I'd also like to welcome our newest Planning and Zoning Commissioner, Sally DeSellis, who was just appointed this month. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start off with citizen communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comment on items relevant to the Planning and Zoning Commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not published on the agenda will only be heard by the Commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the Commission on those items. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. I will note that I know we have a number of you who have signed up to speak this evening. If you are speaking on behalf of a particular agenda item, we will have time for you to do so. But if anyone has any other general citizen communication or comments before we get into the formalized agenda, you're welcome to come up now. Is there anyone present wishing to address the Commission? Okay, acknowledging that. Oh, yes, sure.
Can I just speak freely, or?
You'll have to come up to the podium.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Adams, and I live at 19904 Needle Pine Drive in the Green Ridge subdivision. And of course, I'm addressing the very vague letter that we received from the City Planning Commission stating that we may lose the use of our properties as our homes. I know that you've now posted it on your website, that you've corrected that. However, not everybody looks at your website every day. And what I would personally ask from my friends, my neighbors in my neighborhood is a public apology for the type of fear that you instilled into them. And also a letter, not on Word document, but possibly on letterhead, sent to every neighbor that you sent that letter to. It was completely unfair for the fear that they felt for losing their homes for an extremely poorly written notice.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 3, the consent agenda. So items on the consent agenda may be pulled and moved to the regular agenda if any commissioner would like to discuss. Are there any items on the consent agenda the commissioners would like to remove? Hearing none, I will now read through the consent agenda. Item 3A, approving a preliminary plan for Bluffs at Blackhawk, an approximate 4.91 acres of land out of the John C. Duval Survey 14, Abstract 194, in Travis County, Texas. Item 3B, approve the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes for January 8th, 2024 regular meeting. And item 3C, approving the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes for February 5th, 2024 regular meeting. I'll accept a motion and a second to approve items 3A, B, and C on the consent agenda.
So moved.
You get a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the regular business for discuss and consider. So no items were pulled from consent, so we will move into our first public hearing. So the commission welcomes comment on the following items. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. For item 5A, Jeremy Frizzell, Director of Planning and Development Services, will be presenting.
Good evening, Chair and Commission and general public, to all the citizens and all the property owners that are in attendance tonight. I do sincerely apologize for inflicting any fear to you on your properties. I established a notification that was required to be able to provide to the individual property owners that have this particular zoning, and then by state law, we also provide notification to property owners that are within 500 feet of those different properties. And so if you received a notification, the properties that are identified in the red color and in the blue color are the properties that are zoned the CL3, the CL4, and the CL5 zoning districts. The blue represents what we call planned unit developments. Those are zoning districts that are established for their own design requirements and their own design regulations, but many times they have a base zoning, which means that when regulations weren't written into there, they default to something else. So when we were going through the text amendments, we're required to provide a notification. I created one letter, and I sent that letter out to everybody. So it went to all the properties that have that zoning, and then to all the buffer properties, the people that are outside that area. So that notification would have gone to the Ridge at Steeds Crossing, residents in Green Ridge, the Highland Park and Highland Park North neighborhoods, Bowles Place, Katy Mead, Saxony, Royal Point, portions of Falcon Point, and there may be a few others that are up there as well. So if you received a notification, you're in one of those residential subdivisions, there are no changes that are proposed to your property. The statement that was included in that letter, and I agree to the lady that spoke, and my sincere apologies again for creating that havoc or that concern. This is a statement that's required by state law to be provided on notifications when there are text amendments or when there are changes that are being done to the code amendments or to the codes. And so that's to notify the property owners that are impacted that they have that this statement is there, that there could be changes that occur to their property. For those that receive the notification that are outside, that are in the buffer area within those subdivisions that I was talking about, there's no changes that are proposed to your property. Instead, you were given that notice just so that you were aware. So I will go through the amendments, but I just wanted to publicly announce that I do apologize for that. Again, these are the notifications that are the properties that are specifically included in the text amendments, Commission. The dark red represents the CL5 zoning district. That's our urban center level 5 zoning district. The regular red is the CL4 zoning district. That's the CL4 is just urban. And then the kind of pinkish color that you see along Finnig, and over next to Bowles Place area, that is our CL3 zoning district. Today we call that suburban level 3. How this all started. In our comprehensive plan, when we went through that process, the community identified that there was a vision to be able to establish walkable, mixed-use type of environment. We wanted opportunities to be able to live, work, play, all within Pflugerville. And looking at opportunities to establish those, one of the goals inside of the comprehensive plan was to create these kind of mixed-use districts, or these mixed-use areas. Mixed-use neighborhood, mixed-use commercial, and innovation centers are identified as areas within the comprehensive plan that basically fall within proximity to SH 130 and to SH 45. Housing diversification was also something that was promoted inside the Aspire plan to be able to give people the opportunity for different housing options. And then again, looking for establishing places in Pflugerville that are different, that are dense, that are a little bit more that work, live, play kind of concept. Following the approval of the comprehensive plan, and it was April of 2022 when we approved that plan, we started looking at what are our code regulations and where do we need to make the adjustments to account for the requirements and the items that were identified inside of the comprehensive plan. We started that process by hiring a consultant. Friesen Nichols helped with us to establish these. They went back and looked at what our development code codes were and what adjustments needed to be made. We focused on the corridor to establish these areas. And again, we started in basically the fall of 2022, moved into late summer, August of 2023, we came to the Planning and Zoning Commission with the code amendments that are basically the same thing that are being proposed tonight. Planning and Zoning Commission heard those, made recommendation for approval with some conditions that were then integrated, and we took it to City Council in August. In August, the City Council held their public hearing, and then in September they went through the consideration. There was a protest that was filed on that, which then required City Council to have a supermajority vote to be able to approve those. That was not able to be obtained, and therefore the code amendments just stopped. Earlier this year, City Council directed staff to move forward and to bring back the code amendments, and that's where we are tonight. So again, we're talking about the suburban level 3, the urban level 4, and the urban center level 5 districts. Again, the level 3 is proposed to be adjusted. Instead of being called suburban, it's to be called neighborhood. Neighborhood gets at more of that neighborhood mixed use concept that was discussed in the comprehensive plan. It establishes the opportunity for small residential as well as some limited commercial uses. Again, the emphasis is on creating walkable communities. Urban level 4 and the urban level 5 are both identified to be within the mixed use commercial and innovation center areas that are represented in the comprehensive plan. Again, those areas are along 45 and 130. The level 5 is intended to be our more intense area where we would have vertical mixed use and would anticipate to have multi-story buildings focusing on that mixed use, live, work, play, walkable area, and creating more of an urban design. I'm going to go through all of the code amendments and kind of highlight as we go through each of the different chapters, maybe some of the big picture pieces. These are also all the same things that are listed on our website. They're inside of the packet, so we can reference back to pages if we need to do that as well. But in CL3 district, again, that's that kind of salmon colored that you see along the south side of Finnick Lane, along the east side of the Bowles neighborhood. Are really the two major places I can think of that have CL3 district associated with it. What's proposed to be included is the cottage courts and cottage rows. That's basically a housing type that smaller type houses that focus in towards common open space, common green space. They may go out, be focused towards like a walkway or something like that. Typically, in the past, we might see something like this come through with a condominium. This is to be able to create a by right instead of going through a condo kind of process. Multifamily, then again, was divided. Typically, we had historically, right now, is the word I was trying to say. We have multifamily as just a straight zoning or straight land use. The proposed amendments break this up into different types. And so we have a neighborhood scale that's permitted inside of the CL3 district by, it would be permitted with the conditions that are then outlined further down inside of the code. We also have suburban type, which is something that you typically see that would be required through a specific use permit process. Just as a reminder, a specific use permit means that it's not allowed just to come in all by itself. They have to go through the zoning process, come to Planning and Zoning Commission, ask for consideration, then it goes to City Council and they either approve or deny that request. And the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council can also include conditions in a specific use permit. So when you see SUP listed up on the screen, SUP refers to specific use permit, and that's that additional step. I'm just making sure everybody knows that. Urban is also a classification that was included in it, but that would also require our urban multifamily will have to meet all of the design requirements that are listed in the conditions, and in addition, come back for a specific use permit. Triplex and quadplex was something that was added to be able to account for, again, a different housing type inside of the CL3 district. Retirement living village is something that was also added. The conditions that are associated with it are just consistent with the conditions that we have in the code today, which basically allows for a live-in place kind of opportunity. The CL4 district are the areas that are outlined or identified in that red color, just the kind of more of the candy apple red, if you will, for that color. It includes the multifamily, again, breaking that apart into suburban and to the urban. The suburban, again, requires a specific use permit, and the urban would be permitted with design conditions that are outlined in the code. Other items that are maybe notable in the CL4 district, the triplex and quadplex could be considered, but it would come in through a specific use permit. So basically looking to elevate the density or the intensity just a little bit more. If they wanted to do triplex or quadplex, that would come to you because that would be a little bit less intense. The CL5 district, then again, is our most intense zoning district. That's where we find it at the intersections of like major highways, 45, 130 at the southwest corner where Stone Hill is zone CL5 district. Along the north side of SH45, just east of Heatherwild, you can see that darker color is the CL5 zoning there. And then further down near Pecan and 130 is that CL5 zoning. Again, that's intended to have the urban multifamily permitted with the design conditions. Suburban would require a specific use permit. A couple other things that we identified in here was the parking lots, instead of having just a giant surface parking lot permitted by right, that would need to go through a process, going through this specific use permit. If you had a structured parking garage that you were wanting to use as a commercial use, that would be permitted by right. Call centers would be required with design conditions, and then daycare facilities would be permitted with design conditions. And just the map to make sure that everybody's oriented to where we're talking about. The planned unit developments that I mentioned that are shown in blue, those were approved with the design conditions. And again, they have base zoning districts associated with each of those. And so where something was silent, they would defer to what those regular Unified Development Code regulations are. And so that's why they're also included. I mentioned conditions in that first section. And those conditions are, you could move forward on something as long as you meet these certain things, right? Some of the notable conditions that were listed or included in here, for amenity centers, we didn't want those to get credit towards the non-residential component that would be required on the ground floor, such as in like an urban mixed-use type of development. We would want them to have standalone kinds of land uses to create that pedestrian environment. Call centers will be required to have 60% of their parking included in a structured parking garage. So that way we're not getting vast fields of parking that might come with the call center. Drive-throughs were adjusted to basically ensure that there was a pedestrian walking area there that's associated with it. And we didn't just have a drive-through out in the middle of a parking lot, but instead we're talking about urban forms and trying to create that situation where you could have a drive-through, but you also want to be able to have the pedestrian be able to walk up there and without being, in total conflict with the car. Fueling station, it was identified as being gas station inside of our code today. We adjusted this to be able to account for electric vehicle charging stations and to be able to offer that opportunity as vehicles continue to evolve. We wanted to make sure that those like EV charging would not be penalized. That there's an opportunity for them to come in, but then also limiting it so that it's also not just a vast field of just EV charging stations. Neighborhood scale multifamily is something that would be permitted in the CL3 district, provided it meets conditions, and the conditions is that it would be limited to 8 units per building. 3-story max is a 35-foot in height requirement. That's the same as what single family is today. I mentioned multifamily urban, and that's really, I would say, is kind of the meat and potatoes, if you will, for the adjustments. The multifamily urban gets at establishing a vertical mixed use. Originally, we were talking about how do we create mixed use, and we thought we could put in a land use itself as mixed use, but it didn't really make sense. And so we've adjusted that. We pulled it out. We created this provision to be able to allow for multifamily projects to come into, say, the CL5 zoning district or the CL4 zoning district, but require them to integrate that commercial element on the ground floor to create those spaces and those interesting areas that we've talked about in the past. We have that in many of our plan unit developments and specific use permits. We've had those. The commercial integration be brought into it. So this way we tried to include it so that it would essentially come as like a by right. As long as you meet these things, then you're able to move forward. If somebody does not want to abide by one of these conditions, they still can move forward with the multifamily project. It will just fall underneath what we call a suburban. And so there is still that opportunity to get a different type of project. It doesn't have to be all of them like this. But in the situation where somebody wants to have an urban project and wants to design it that way, we create the opportunity for that. I'm sorry. I'll speak up. The CL3 district, I'm blasting myself, so if you all can't, can you hear me? Sort of? Talk louder? Yeah. All right. Do my best. It echoes in my ear. So CL3, multifamily, non-residential, the general regulation amendments, these are things that are adjustments to the CL3 districts themselves. So we increased the buffer yard, which is a space that would be between a non-residential and, say, a single family. We increased that distance from 25 feet to 30 feet. The lot coverage and impervious cover have been increased from 40% to 65%. That's also to account how the differing land uses are being brought in. So that doesn't mean that they can just cover the entire field, but what it does provide with the 65% allowance, and that also means that the detention also has to be provided for those things. Density, the minimum units of 6 is retained. What was increased was from 10 units to 20 units per acre. That's to account for the suburban type of development that could potentially go in there. That doesn't mean that they will max that, but that is an opportunity. Specific use permit would be required again for a suburban type of multifamily project. The units per structure was increased from 6 to 8, and that was to be able to account for the 8-plex. CL4 and CL5 zoning district changes. Again, these are for the general regulations or the pieces that you find in subchapter 4. Impervious cover was increased to 85%. That was just associated with our CL4 zoning district. It was at 80%. We're making it be consistent with the CL5 zoning district and be consistent with non-residential in that category. There is a build-to-line addition that was put into place for the CL4 and the CL5 districts. This is not applicable towards the toll or towards the frontage road, but it is applicable towards the other streets. It would be less than, basically the buildings would need to be less than 25 feet for greater than 50% of their lot frontage. There is an alternative that was included for enhanced stormwater. That was a request by one of the developers when we were going through that original process. And so that was included as a caveat. For urban multifamily projects, the max height that would be permitted would be 100 feet in the CL4 zoning district and 120 feet in the CL5 zoning district. That does not preclude them from meeting our distance requirements that are currently in place for the rest of the code. So that would allow them to have this a little bit taller building within those areas in the CL5 area. And it's really to be able to create that design, that urban design. And then the density was something else to make sure that we noted. The urban zoning district, the urban multifamily max be increased to 75 units per acre in the CL4 district and then to 90 units per acre in CL5. Again, that's to get at that urban design and to be able to get them to the point where they could provide the structured parking and to provide that non-residential piece. What we heard when we were going through this process at the beginning was there's a number of multifamily apartment projects that are throughout the community that are fine as is. But there was also a desire to be able to have that vertical mixed use. Council, when we showed different slides of things, they identified that really what the goal is to be able to create opportunities for the picture on the right. And so, again, that urban multifamily requirement that's being proposed inside these amendments helps to establish that type of reform. They can still do what's on the left-hand side, again, through the specific use permit process. Nobody's saying that you can't do that. They can propose that. And then the CL5, or I'm sorry, the urban, there's opportunities to be able to create that. So when we talk about land use, when we adjust one component, then we have to start looking at the rest of the code pieces to make sure that they're all dovetailing as well. So not only with the land use and the conditions, how does it sit on the lot, but then also what do the design requirements come in. We have a lot of design requirements built into the conditions, but then we also needed to go back through and make adjustments to subchapter 9 that talks specifically to these different kinds of projects. So that's what's listed on the screen right now. Neighborhood and suburban multifamily projects will follow what our regular design requirements are today for multifamily. The multifamily urban creates the design pieces that we've talked about and shown pictures of. There's provisions in there where if they have a flat roof, then it creates some massing so that you have design that is consistent with what you would anticipate in an urban environment. One of the pieces that are in our code right now is that we require multifamily projects to include garages. In suburban environment, that's where they have a standalone kind of garage. Many times those garages are set on the side. We have a requirement that a certain number of them are integrated into a building. That's still going to be required when you go through the suburban and a neighborhood context. For the urban context, when you have to provide a structured parking garage, then the typical garages go away. Additional screening pieces included in the code were how do we address the parking areas. Any kind of surface parking is required to be behind buildings and not visible from the public street. And the idea on that is that we want to create areas where you have the buildings up front, you have that pedestrian walkable spaces, and you're not right up against nothing but fields of parking. Office and commercial structures, the adjustments that were made in there apply towards buildings that are 4 stories or higher. It was getting at massing again, looking at the ground floor of having certain kind of design, middle floor having a certain design, then the top cap being designed out that way. Parking structures was also, we included requirements in there of how those are going to look and how they need to be screened. And then pedestrian entrance standards were brought over to be consistent with our current standards. And that's the entrance into buildings and how that's set up. Landscaping was also something that came into play when we start talking about creating more urban kind of spaces and opening up, a project to take up the area of a lot. The amount of landscaping also needs to be flexed to be able to account for that urban design. And so the landscaping provisions were adjusted in here to be able to be consistent with what's being proposed for land use, and then the placement and design on that property. Screening requirements, building foundation standards, things were brought over just to make sure that we had rules that were in place for the corridor zoning. In the end, the proposed amendments are generally consistent with what council's vision has been, what they had identified their vision to be when we were going through this process. The Aspire had identified, the idea of offering these additional housing opportunities, looking at how do we create mixed-use environments, and the proposed amendments help us get to that point. We still have the ability to pursue a planned unit development where they come forward and propose their own design requirements for their particular properties. So that's something that is still able to be provided. and for them to go through that process. If somebody was to go through a PUD or planned unit development, that means that they come back to Planning and Zoning Commission and to City Council for consideration. It goes through the public hearing process. People would be notified again for those properties if they were to go through a zoning. Same thing with a specific use permit. So if somebody's not able or does not want to be able to meet the requirements for an urban multifamily project, but they want to do a multifamily project in one of those zoning districts, they could still go through the suburban, which then comes through Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for the specific use permit. Planning and Zoning Commission again recommended approval for these amendments back in 2023 with the conditions that have already been integrated. We did go through the process with the development community, heard their conditions and questions. We integrated where we felt like we could to be able to still meet the intent of what the Aspire plan talks about, what council had talked about, what Planning and Zoning Commission had seen and wanted. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff does recommend approval on these proposed amendments. Again, I would like to reiterate that the proposed amendments do not impact single-family neighborhoods. They do not impact the areas that received a notice that were within those buffer areas. These are strictly applicable towards the properties that are zoned the CL4, CL5, and CL3 districts or have that associated with them. City Council will consider these items on March 26th for a public hearing and first reading. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Commission might have.
Do we ask questions now?
Let's actually do our public comments first, and then we can bring them back to commissioners, if that works for you. Great. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right, we had 4 residents sign up to speak on this item. It looks like up first, Miriam Krellin.
My name is Miriam Kraut. Wow. Okay.
The volume's turned up now.
I see that. Wish I'd had one of these in my elementary school years. My name is Miriam Crowlin, and I live at 1409 Sweet William Lane in Bowles Place. And I have a couple of just questions that need some clarifications. I'm looking at CL3, which is east of us, and it's before the CL4 that is also pictured, and it's relatively a very small section there. I'm assuming that the blue area that's next to our neighborhood is Amazon. Am I right about that? Okay. So in looking at that area right there, it's not a very wide area. And my question would be that the changes proposed say that they're taking out low density, which means we could have a higher density neighborhood scale suburban development, which I was looking to see where else neighborhood scale suburban development was in the 2040 vision plan, and I could not find those words anywhere. So I'm kind of looking for a visual example of what that might look like. I also see that featuring single family homes is taken out. So no longer in that little bitty space or area are we doing single families there. Again, that's not a very large or wide area. And then there's also a term that says activity nodes. I have no idea what an activity node is, and I would seek clarification on what that might be. I did reference the 2040 maps, could not find activity node anywhere. I could not find what that looked like. And then at the very end, the added changes include standards for built form. I would like to have been an architect, but I'm not, so I do not know what that means either. So my main concern is with these particular changes in verbiage, what is that area going to look like? I did also note that the other area that is CL3 is actually real close to here. It just keeps going down Fenning Lane. And that is not proposed to have um, very dense looking areas. It's actually quite in the map in the 2040 map. It actually looks less dense and a lot more does not take out single family at all on there. And I would like our area to kind of look like that area. There's only two CL3 areas in there, and I think that they could possibly look pretty good together. So that's my comment is more of clarification of what that is going to look like next to my neighborhood. And also that our neighborhood is going to be surrounded now by CL4, CL3, and whereas other neighborhoods that are single family neighborhoods and zoned as such would not have that kind of surrounding area. All three sides of our neighborhood is surrounded. And then there's a big main street, which is Pecan, that goes to
I'm going to have to stop you
Amazon.
there. I apologize. But
Okay,
I
no, that's fine.
appreciate your comments,
Thank you.
and I suspect commissioners will probably have similar questions as you did, so thank you. Okay, up next we had James Stewart. I think we'll do it as part of our discussion instead of trying to do them now. All right, no James? Yeah. Chris Bradford.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Chris Bradford with Jackson Walker. I'm here on behalf of Weisenbaker. Weisenbaker owns the parcel at the northeast corner of SH 130 and Pecan. On that map, it is that tiny blue dot there at the intersection of those two. They've got their design center on a triangular track next to SH 130. And to the side of that, they've got a warehouse / office building. And all the way down that street are warehouses built or under construction. So it's kind of a warehouse road. Our concern is with the new build to line requirement. We're in the Lakeside Meadows PUD, and I don't think the build to line requirement is going to be applied to the property. But it's nevertheless a big concern because the lot is triangular shaped. It's got a tiny amount of frontage on Pecan Street, and it's got a 50-foot gas pipeline easement there. It's not going to be feasible on a triangular shaped lot like that to say we'll smush the building in the corner of that triangle. I mean, they got a new building. They're not going to, it's a year-old building. They're not planning to tear it down, but they don't want to be a non-conforming use either. So what we are seeking, there are really two things here. One is the odd configuration of the lot that makes it really impractical for the build-to line to work there. But the other thing is, as you see, it's kind of orphaned there on its side of the street. The other properties on that street are all zoned for basically campus industrial. They're warehouse zoning. And a build-to line is kind of a context requirement. You're trying to create the feel, create a wall of buildings up to the street line, to the sidewalk, so people feel like it's more of a walkable area. But that, of course, doesn't really make sense when you're talking about a small parcel at the end of a row of warehouses. So we'd ask you guys to recommend, consideration. We're discussing it with staff, so we brought it up with staff, but perhaps recommend consideration of an exception for oddly configured lots, or for lots that are, I'm calling it an orphan tract. I mean, it follows CL4 rules, but it's kind of all by itself on its side of the street. And some of those context, design criteria that you're going for don't really make sense for an end parcel like that. So we ask y'all to recommend consideration of those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we had Shane Hazelton.
Hello. That's interesting. It comes from right above my head with an echo. The first speaker has the exact same concern as I do. I'm 209 Plumbago, and so we have the CL3 directly next to us. I mean, when I tell people I bought a place in Pflugerville, I don't think the first thing that comes to their mind is, oh, that's going to be sort of a increased mixed use. That's an interesting word. I mean, it sounds so nice, right? But it sort of feels like the headline here is increased density. And we paid a premium for our house, and it faces out CL3. And we wouldn't have bought it if it was going to have cottages as described. I mean, how many people here want increased density? Just okay, he does. Okay, how many people here would prefer not to have increased density? Okay, a few more. All right, so I mean, that's the sentiment. I would imagine that people would be sort of against that chose to live in Pflugerville. I mean, these are nice words, these nice drawings, and but I think we might prefer to have the density that we have. My specific concern is for the CL3 strike through of single family homes. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we had someone else sign up. Michael Trejo.
Hello, my name is Michael Trail. I live at 117 Mammoth Cave Boulevard, the Highland Park neighborhood. I was just made aware of this with the same letter, which was disappointing because I was concerned. I just bought my house 5 years ago, and I'm trying to concern when you say you're going to lose your land. I actually feel like I was going to lose my land to the development that you're exactly talking about, the CL3, CL4, CL5. Now, outside of my house, what you're proposing, I will be nothing but surrounded by big buildings, and the roadways can't even sustain what we have now in my neighborhood. And I apologize, I'm not going to speak for other neighborhoods, but for Highland Park, it's really disappointing. I bought my house before they started building out. Stonehill was already there, but the amount of traffic that I have to deal with now just for what I thought was buying a family neighborhood has now turned into a commercial property development. And I do not want to see any more buildings higher than 30 feet. I mean, I can't even see the sky. When I first moved out there, I could see the stars. I can't see the stars anymore. And it's only going to go away if you're proposing 3-4 story, 100-foot buildings surrounding my house. And anybody else that lives in Highland Park. I don't know how many people are here from Highland Park, but it's very disappointing. On top of that, what are the incentives that we get as people that are going to be really affected by this? I know some other people that might not be around it in Pflugerville, but are these businesses getting tax incentives that are going to help me because now I have to live up to the tax rate on all these properties for this value when it goes up? My house beforehand, when I bought, was $285. During COVID, I was offered right under $600,000 for my house. Now, what is my house going to be worth now that I'm going to be paying property taxes once all this gets built? The roadway's going to have to go in, the infrastructure, the water, and I'm assuming I'm going to have to eat that cost, and a lot of other people in Florida are going to have to eat that cost. I'm not opposed to the development of this. Like I said, I'm going to drive out in my neighborhood. I'm facing CL3, behind my neighborhood, CL4, and then north of my neighborhood, still before I even get 45, man, CL5. Like, I can't even get around it. There's no way for me to get out of it. I don't understand why it's not possible just to do single-family homes and build out another neighborhood versus high-rise buildings. I mean, if you're going to build something, at least build some homes, but this high-rise development to me just seems like it's too far ahead, and I don't know where their next place could be, but for people that are living right around Stonehill and 45, I just think it's not the best use. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, I believe that was everyone who signed up to. Oh, nope, one more. All right. Thank you. Cynthia Montgomery.
Hello. Sorry. My name is Cynthia Montgomery. I live at, 601 Plumbago. My big concern is the same as the other people for both places, is that behind us, it's a very small parcel of land, and to increase the density, one of the key factors is that you also have Amazon back there. It wouldn't benefit Amazon because a lot of the construction back there and the traffic coming from Amazon would make the place almost undrivable. My mother has gone through this in San Antonio. When I was born in an area that was rural. The area now is completely over urbanized. The infrastructure cannot keep up. And it's at the point now where driving out there takes forever and there's always construction. I would highly recommend that we keep Pflugerville. Pflugerville, most of us moved out here to get away from the density. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have one more. Two more. All right. Nick Crosby? Crossy? Apology. Sorry about that.
Hi, my name is Nick Christie. I live in Falcon Point. My concern is our roads can't handle the traffic we've got now. And if we increase density, it's going to be impossible. And some of the areas where you've identified putting warehouses and mixed use, like domain type area, we've got that huge field along 685 that is completely undeveloped. It's not affecting any neighborhoods, or it would affect the roads, and that's about it. We have no transportation, no public transportation in Pflugerville. So you're going to get a bunch of apartments, and then you expect people to move around. Everybody's going to have a car, and it's going to be a nightmare to drive in Pflugerville and to shop in Pflugerville. We only have Stone Hill. So I don't know where these people are going to go. And we have the HEB up in Hutto, and we have the HEB on Pecan, and that's it. I mean, we're not. Yeah, we have Target and Walmart. That's true, but we have a lot more people than we have services. So if we're going to do all this density business, then we need to talk about public transportation, and we need to talk about better roads and infrastructure. Where our sewer bills have gone through the roof. $89 I got charged last month for sewer only, not even the water or the garbage. That's because they want to expand the waste treatment plant. Well, if you bring more people in and you have higher density, who's paying for the expansion of those things? It's us. And we need more responsible leadership. And I don't think we have it right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jerry Haskins.
Hi, I'm Jerry Haskins. I live in Greenridge, the development there, and you're proposing what I think, having trouble reading this, to put commercial right behind us. And again, this is a neighborhood that has larger lots. We have, 3,000 to 5,000 square foot houses here. These are family houses where you have, multiple large families in these. And it just doesn't make any sense to stick right behind all of these houses that we're going to lose complete value if they stick a warehouse behind that house, behind our houses. And we don't have infrastructure. We have so many people have moved in. I've lived there for going on 9 years now. And it used to be I could walk around on my streets. It was peaceful. Now there's cars driving through our neighborhood at 60 miles an hour because they're trying to cut across our neighborhood to get over to Hutto, because they're commuting through and there's no way for them to get around it. You add this, it's going to increase that completely too. Everybody's going to be cutting in and out of all these neighborhoods that are left. And nobody's, going to be able to even walk down their street without worrying about getting hit by these cars that are driving through. You guys haven't even solved any of that. Where we got all this streets that are jammed up And now you want to add more high density to everything and large buildings everywhere. Nobody wants this. There's not a single person, as you saw in here, other than I don't know, I think just one guy that wants to have apartments everywhere. There's places he can move for that. You move to Pflugerville, you want to live in a house. You move into any of these suburban things, you want to live in suburb areas. You want to live in a house, not in an apartment. And increasing apartments is not going to make people happy around here. Having large, tall, Austin-style domain, facilities isn't what people want. And I just hope that you can put it into this, build more houses, don't build apartments. We got plenty of apartments already. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Shannon Petroni.
Hi, my name is Shannon Patron. I live at 605 Plumbago. I'm at the top of the hill, and I know your jobs are hard. I understand that. But we moved here 8 years ago to be close to farmland. Farmland is disappearing. Science 101 tells you if you want water to come, you got to have some of that grass down there to make the water come. Otherwise, we end up in drought system. You now have us in 1 day a week watering. And you want to add all this other cement around us. So what's going to happen to us? Are we going to dry up like Georgetown by 2030? That's not going to run out of water. Where are we heading with this? And talk about traffic. I live at the top of Plumbago. I substitute teach at Pflugerville Elementary. It takes me 12 minutes to get to work now. I used to be able to drive it in 3. Amazon, we were promised when Amazon was put in, they won't go through downtown Pflugerville. They won't interrupt our traffic. They'll go to 130. Doesn't happen. And I know anybody that drives Pecan knows it doesn't happen. Because we sat there at 6 o'clock at night. We sat there for 20 minutes to go about a half a mile. So if you put something in on that zone behind our houses on Plumbago, you won't be moving through Pflugerville. You'll be sitting in traffic. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, I'd like to request a motion and a second to close the public hearing on this item, and then we'll move into discussion. And
Also move.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. So the public hearing is now closed. And Jeremy, if you don't mind taking the podium again, we can get started with our discussion for the questions. I think I'll start us off here. I wanted to see if you could address some of the comments and questions from citizens regarding especially the CL3 and the neighborhood scale changes. I know there's a number of changes. I know one that I think is a positive to the concerns of the folks that have been speaking is I believe the buffer between new construction in that area is improved. That may not be the full answer, but I think it might be worthwhile to maybe re-summarize some of those changes to CL3 if you don't mind.
Yeah. And just a quick clarifier too, I also heard a concern that single-family detached was being removed from CL3 district, and that is not the case. CL3 still has single-family detached permitted by right. There was no changes to that.
I think there's confusion about sorry for jumping in, but I think there's confusion because the change in the wording in the definition looks one way, but if you go to our website, go to the planning and zoning in the meeting section on the Pflugerville website and download our agenda, you can click on a link to the supplemental materials for this, and you'll see Exhibit A, which goes into greater detail on the corridor definitions. And it has table 4.4.2 corridor districts permitted uses, and you'll see that single family and CL3 is permitted by right. So they're not taking single family 3 out. They're not taking single family out of CL3.
No.
And it is, as somebody who's been sitting on this commission for several years, I've actually been really impressed by the way our city staff have worked with developers to make sure that as as these old agricultural plots inevitably turn over as farmers retire or the family no longer wants to keep up the expense of owning that property and they sell it to developers, our city staff have done a really good job of making sure that when the developers come in, they buffer whatever is coming in to match the existing neighborhood next to it. So change is inevitable, growth is inevitable, but our staff are really working hard to put in buffer zones. And then I'll let the expert talk.
Thank you. So on the screen, these represent the regulation amendments that are proposed. So a neighborhood, the neighborhood commercial neighborhood scale multifamily, that is something that's new, and that's something that's proposed as basically a 8-unit kind of complex that would be included in there. The definition says multifamily dwelling with 5 to 8 dwelling units in a structure on a single lot oriented toward a public street or common area with parking in a court, tuck under, or garage configuration to the rear. I don't have a picture specifically included in here. I don't think.
You had one that had like a small buffer that we could show. There. I don't know if it.
Yeah, so that's
is
the
a good
build to
example.
line, but it's no more than 8 units per building is what would be proposed. So, I mean, if you look at the picture to the left, that's what we would typically see for a suburban kind of multifamily project. If you would imagine that a building that has 8 units inside of that complex, no taller than 35 feet in height. And then again, the buffer requirement has been increased to the 30 feet. And the spacing for the height will still be applied towards those apartments as well. So as height increases, every 1 foot of height requires a 5-foot setback for apartments from single family. Did that help answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Jeremy, could you speak to the process for developing the Aspire 2040 plan? Because I know we here at the commission have had the privilege of hearing about it in detail, but maybe some others, newer commissioners, perhaps weren't here for that. But I know I was pretty impressed, and frankly, the consultants were pretty impressed with how much public input went into developing that plan.
Yeah, it was a significant amount of public input. It was during COVID time, and so we were doing the outreach, going through the public process. We did all of our public meetings. We did a lot of virtual meetings. We had a really high number. I don't have that number in front of me, but a greater amount of public comment versus doing traditional types of regular meetings, coming into a forum such as, come to this building and go through that process. We also did have stakeholder group that was involved in that. Those were representatives throughout the community that came forward and brought their ideas as well. It was about a 2-year process as well.
Yeah, I got to go to some of the events. I was lucky enough to be on the stakeholder committee, and we went through several exercises. And then I know after that, there were several public events that the committee didn't go to because it was time for other people to speak, and there was a lot of input about what would you like to see, how would you like to see it develop, what are the amenities that you would be interested in. And I know that a lot of that is aimed at broadening our tax base because everybody wants to live here. If Austin's the new San Francisco, people are coming to this area, and if we don't have the supply for them to purchase homes, then we're going to have to bear the brunt of the taxes. And I've seen my taxes increase since I moved here in 2011, and I'm really excited to see the developers to start paying that. And another thing, sorry.
No.
I'm just gonna riff until you bring out the hook, or the gong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what I wanted to bring up as well, and Jeremy, feel free to correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but I think that one of the positive elements, especially in the CL3, is codifying things like the cottage courts, which today they can serve. I believe the intent was to serve a need of sort of what the wonky folks like to consider sort of missing middle, right? They're not super expensive homes. They're not apartments. It's an opportunity for home ownership in a way that is certainly is more dense than a single family home, but I think provides green space and trail connectivity and things like that. And is that part of the intent of updating some of the rules here for that specific section?
Yeah, the idea is to be able to offer variety, right? There's multiple housing options that would be available through the proposed amendments. So it does not mean that there's a developer that if you have a piece of property that's zoned something that is going to get apartments on it, or that they are going to go and build a single family neighborhood there either. It doesn't mean that they're obligated to do any of these different land uses. This is just giving the opportunity for, if you were going to propose a housing type, what are those different varieties that we can offer inside the community so that we can have a mixture of housing. We can offer housing that maybe somebody wants to downsize, or maybe they're just now coming into a home and giving those opportunities. Looking for pathways towards home ownership is kind of the key to having a variety of housing types so that you can go from one to another and move through that direction without having to leave the community. So if you were, say, living in a single family home right now in a neighborhood and that serves your need, and you really like your neighborhood and you want to downsize, you want to go to something else, you may not want to leave that area. You have your friends and whatever there. And so, that's part of this is to be able to continue to offer those pieces. It doesn't mean that neighbor, that has no development on it today and has that zoning, that they're going to go and build cottages or build single family or build multifamily there. Just that it's part of that land use matrix that they can go through.
I don't know how the other commissioners think, but I do think there's one other part of this that I think potentially brings a lot of value, and that's around for the. To your point, we're not gonna be able to stop apartment buildings from continuing to grow, but I do think that some of the new rules in this proposal around ensuring that if they're of a certain size, they are required to have retail and restaurant space and things like that to improve quality of life around them. I think that's an area where today we do get a lot of the just big box apartments. So I think there is some opportunity on the positive side of this to really get developers to think more cohesively about the neighborhoods and providing neighborhood services. So that's just.
No, I think it was really interesting, Jeremy, when you were presenting. I had the same. I've had, again, watching over the last couple of years. When I hear mixed use, I think of the well-established planning, eco-friendly movement that's been around for about 20, 30 years now. Started in the Pacific Northwest and has made its way across the country because it's a good eco-friendly land use. And so we didn't think that we would need to clarify that means you need to have retail and storefront on the bottom floor. But I'm glad that you've codified that, and I hope that council agrees and approves, because I think that is going to be really helpful for making the development actually abide by the mixed use principles of conservation and economic activity as well as eco-friendly activity.
Well, and by creating the opportunities for having, even if it's a little bit horizontal mixed use, where you would have, homes or residential components, maybe it's townhomes, maybe it's that retirement living village kind of concept, but also having opportunities for commercial development to be within that quadrant. That means you could go to the doctor, you could go and get your services, you can live right there, and you don't have to leave your neighborhood.
Speaking of things being close by, so you don't have to leave the neighborhood, we all hate traffic, and I know we occasionally receive report outs from other commissions and other elements of government on the plans for transportation development in the area. But can you speak to, is there a commission on transportation, or what is the governmental body that I mean, I know we have like 6 governmental bodies over the various roads that are in and around Pflugerville, but generally speaking, what are the areas where transportation is in scope?
So through our CIP planning and through our master transportation planning, that's where we establish where are the roads that we need to increase and what are the what do we need to do to improve the transportation network. As development comes in, we identify inside of our master plans where those different roads need to be. As development comes, they're required to construct those roads. They're also required to pay transportation impact fee or roadway impact fees. Sorry, as part of that transportation element. But to your point, who's that guide? We have our CIP is really that lead that helps to implement, and we come forward with our bonds, our projects that need to move forward. There's a number of those that are listed inside of our CIP. So as we move forward and as we have our roadway impact fees come about, then we're able to move forward on that. The mobility transportation master plan is going to be, or the transportation master plan is going to be updated. This last council meeting was approval for a mobility plan, and so we'll be looking at not only roads but also integrating the trail networks into that as well, so that looking at multi-modes.
When that transportation mobility, or when the mobility master plan is happening, will they consider, I know that the voters, I want to say in 2001 in Pflugerville, opted out of Cap Metro. Might that be something that we can take back to the voters? Again, out of scope for this commission, but is that something that might come out of that planning process?
It's certainly an element that might be, identified as potentially a consideration of this. I mean, that might be an outcome that comes out of that mobility plan. What we have in place today is Fetch a Ride, and Fetch a Ride is an opportunity for people to be able to get around, inside the community and be able to utilize those services right now. So that's our transportation element that we bring for providing opportunities to get around town.
I think I had just 2 other fairly tactical items I wanted to ask about. So we did hear from one gentleman inquiring about, there may be some oddly shaped, or I think the word used was orphaned plots. What would be the process by which someone who would be affected in that way could?
In that particular situation, I think that's there may be an alternative way to look at adjustments there. So that one is a planned unit development. There may be opportunities for us to be able to revisit that particular planned unit development to ensure that the kind of design and style and things that they were planning and intending for, that there isn't any kind of negative repercussion that's associated with that. For any development that's going through the process, if a code changes, there's also a vested rights provisions that they can go through. They submit and they go through that process. It's information that comes to us. We take it forward and we review it with legal staff to see if those things are applicable.
Related to that, I did want to ask, have we received any other comments or proposed amendments or anything like that from impacted landowners directly about these updates or provisions?
I haven't heard any kind of adjustments that have been requested at this point, no.
Okay, thank you.
We worked, I believe, with CIP to approve a drastic increase to the developer fees for the water infrastructure. Was it CIP that we met with? Have those, so we were really concerned about making sure that the impact for the water, we have a lot of water infrastructure in Pflugerville in the works. We are catching up on to our growth. Those are in effect now?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so our water and wastewater impact fees, so any kind of development that comes forward is required to pay an impact fee for water, wastewater, and roadway impact.
And we went, and remind me, did the city worked with consultants so that we could increase above the maximum state level for the developer fees, right? By demonstrating the need? Is that what we did?
I can't
Or
recall that. Is Is that accurate? Yes.
We went
Went
to
to
the maximum.
Not above what max.
Well, I mean, there's like a maximum that you don't have to do any math for, and we were like, it's more expensive than that, so we're gonna do the math and went to the max. Yeah. As a fellow water ratepayer, I felt pretty strongly about that one. Jeremy, or why did I call you Jeremy? You're Jeremy. Why am I blanking? Mr. Chair. I agree with you.
Jonathan is fine.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't know why I blanked on your name. I agree with you that as I was looking through these edits, a lot of it was very familiar with things we reviewed in 2023. I love that your EV fueling station instead of gas station made it in there. I think you should be really proud of that. And I think that the edits tightened up the language from what is already there. But I think really when I'm looking at this document, it's primarily an edit of what was already there. It's nothing new, really, except the EV stuff. Go, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to one of my original comments / questions to Jeremy was I think that the goal here, right, was to signal to developers. I don't want to speak for others necessarily, but I believe the intended like policy decision around these updates were to provide better clarity to developers of what we expect in terms of being smarter about our development going forward.
Yeah. And I went on a deep dive. The actual tables of plants wasn't included, but as I was reading through the landscape requirements, I'm really proud of Pflugerville. We require drought-tolerant native species. We discourage irrigated grass strongly. Go Shane, I assume.
Actually, it was Brandon. But yeah, our conservation standards were integrated into these edits as well.
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, I'll request a motion in a second.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, with a motion in a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes. All right. Having spent a lot of time on one agenda item, we do have another. So we'll move on to item 5B. This is to receive public comment and consider an application to rezone an approximately 14.794 acre tract of land situated in the Alexander Walter Survey number 67, abstract number 791, Travis County, Texas, from General Business 1, GB1, to retail, to be known as Wells Branch and Emmanuel rezoning. And Samantha, I believe you're speaking to this one.
Good evening, Commissioners. Should we turn the volume down? I am presenting the rezoning at Wells Branch and Emmanuel Road. The applicant is requesting to rezone a 14.8 acre tract of land from General Business 1 to retail. The proposed rezoning is a portion of a 22.5 acre tract of land that extends from Emmanuel Road to Fenning Lane. Of the 22.5 acres, 14.8 acres are being proposed for retail zoning, and then the remaining portion of the 22.5 acres will maintain the General Business 1 designation. The applicant did bring forth a comprehensive plan amendment last summer that was addressing the entirety of the tract, so all 22.5 acres. The applicant had chosen to withdraw that application and then come and do a rezoning for the 14 acre tract instead to retail, which is in compliance with the future land use map and comprehensive plan. The subject property is located along Wells Branch Parkway, and it's in between East Fenning Lane and Emmanuel Road. The property was originally annexed in 2018 and was subsequently zoned Agriculture and Development Reserve. The property was then rezoned in 2019 to General Business 1 as part of a larger overall 151 acre rezoning. To the north and to the east of the subject property is single-family residential. We currently have the Liso subdivision under construction there. To the south is Agriculture and Development Reserve, as well as General Business 2, and we have General Business 1 staying to the west of the subject tract. The comprehensive plan and future land use map have the subject parcel designated as neighborhood, retail, office, and commercial. Generally, this future land use is located at the intersection of major thoroughfares. It provides convenient access to neighboring retail businesses and services that are utilized daily by neighboring residents. And it does call for neighborhood level mixed use development. The subject tract is located in the neighborhood district, in the East Pecan neighborhood district. The subject property is split. So the district is split at Gilliland Creek. So to the east is primarily an economic hub and more employment areas. And then to the west of Gilliland Creek is more single-family residential. There is an area around Desan Wells Branch that does offer an opportunity for higher density residential and neighborhood serving retail. There are multiple schools located in this area, and there is also an emphasis in this neighborhood district to increase the pedestrian access and connectivity to trails and parks. Our transportation master plan identifies Wells Branch Parkway as a major arterial road, which provides access to neighboring communities and carries the highest capacity of vehicles throughout the city. Fennig Lane as well as Emmanuel Road are both major collectors. These provide access to local businesses and to local neighborhoods and businesses, and then they're also used for access to higher density residential areas. The proposed zoning district is retail. This is less intensive than the current General Business 1 zoning district. It does allow for residential and commercial uses. So some of the residential uses are single-family attached and live-work units. It does provide convenient access for residents to services, neighborhood businesses, and retail. There's an emphasis on screening the residential from commercial areas through landscaping, and it is also generally located at the intersection of major thoroughfares. Staff finds the proposed rezoning request to be consistent with our comprehensive plan and future land use map. And the retail zoning also provides a nice transition between the General Business 1 and General Business 2 and the single family residential zoning. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning from General Business 1 to retail. I also have the applicant here with some slides as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I'm Michelle Hausman, representing the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Ms. Fleischman went over a very good detailed presentation of the history and this proposed rezoning that we have submitted. So the property, she showed you the aerial photograph and the location, which is 14 acres out of the original 22. There's a remaining 8 acres that is going to remain GB1 zoning. And so as far as the comprehensive plan goes, this proposed retail zoning does meet the comprehensive plan, and we worked diligently with staff since we did withdraw that application to come up with a proposal for this retail zoning district. And surrounding districts, the SFMU, the SFR, as well as agricultural and surrounding GB1 is consistent and compatible with the proposed retail zoning. And these are just the list that is in the staff report that goes over each of the details of the surrounding land uses and zoning. So I'm happy to answer any questions. The staff recommends approval. There's no opposition, and we respectfully request your support. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And did we have any residents wishing to speak this evening? Oh, I think I saw one in the back as well. Okay. That's fine, yeah.
I'm just curious. I keep hearing this word retail spaces. What exactly do you mean? Can you be a little bit more defined in retail? Is this clothing? Is it hardware stores? Is it Dollar General stores? What is the proposal for retail?
So it does have the ability to be any of those. So it is a general retail designation, so it can be anything that's more commerce sales.
Okay. I'm just curious if there was an exact definition of proposal for retail.
Sure. Thank you.
My major question for this is namely has to do with the Emmanuel Road and basic back to our roads. I regularly drive Emmanuel Road in, and currently there is a neighborhood being constructed, and then there are also a couple duplexes that it looks like they're doing some major renovations on. And on any given day, if they have a lot, if they're moving a lot, my drive can go from what should be a 15-minute drive into work to a 30-minute, 45-minute drive to work, where I am texting into work in traffic. I'm stuck in traffic. My major concern is not that the project happens. My major concern is how are we going to plan and mitigate to have the infrastructure prior to the increased stress on the current infrastructure.
Thank you. Just wanted to, is there any other citizens wishing to speak on this one? Okay, I might go ahead and close the public hearing for this. Oh, wait, there is one. Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Wells Branch and Dessau Road, but then you threw in Finnig Lane. What does that have to do with what you were talking about, please?
So this. So Fennig Lane is a part of the property. So here's a good map. So Fennig Lane is on the east side of the property. It's not as visible here, but there is Emmanuel Road on the other side of the property as well. So the Fennig Lane
Well, there's two Finnig Lanes.
okay.
Are you talking about the one next to Amazon or the one right out here? And where the Justice Center comes out on Finnig Lane?
There's more than two.
Is it designed as a connector?
Yeah. So I can help with that. So Finnig Lane does connect out here just to the east, right? Just east of 685, and then it stops right over by the Austin to Chief School. It will eventually connect and curve and come back down if you go to your transportation plan. It will connect over there by Amazon, which then connects to the Pecan Street, right? This subdivision, the Liso subdivision, that's adjacent to this particular tract that she's talking about, they also have constructed a segment of Finnig Lane in it that goes from Wells Branch and then will head north up to Pecan Street and provide that connection. So Finnig is being constructed in increments.
In terms of the zoning, so this is a less intensive use than, so it's currently the entire property is zoned general business 1. So it is more, typically the general business 1 has more regional types of commerce and retail. So we're the proposal is to down zone to retail, so it's more neighborhood serving. So hopefully that will create less traffic and have less people from other areas of the city, creating congestion in specific neighborhoods.
Maybe we'll be close.
Yes, I'll request a motion to close public comment.
Yeah, so move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I had a quick question on the master plan shading, because it seemed like this lot would leave a little sliver on the edge. Was that intended, sort of, or is there a different lot like right behind it that would get kind of left out?
All right, so this, for the comprehensive plan, a lot of it is more broad strokes.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a larger tract. So there is so there is a little bit, it is the bit above is single family residential, but there is a little bit that is.
Yeah, because it kind of seems
above
like
in
the
the
shape
neighborhood
is there, so
retail.
it was probably intended to be just this lot, and there isn't going to like leave a sliver or something else that would be kind of outside the norms. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So I remember this before, and so this sounds to me like one piece of the plan for the developer is going to remain the GB1 as it was, and one piece is going to de-densify to the retail. Is that okay? Cool. Elegant solution. That's all.
Is the portion that is being pulled out approximately or better than the amount of retail required for the previous proposals on this? So I believe one of the, if I'm remembering correctly, this was a case where there was not a very good way of meeting the goals of the proposal before.
Awkward lot size, and I think the
Yeah. So I guess I was just looking for maybe some additional comment that this is sort of a viable piece of land now that will be able to sort of achieve those original goals for that area of having a mixture of residential as well as the retail.
So it is allowed. It is the retail zoning district does allow for a mixed use, and then our comprehensive plan does also touch on mixed use as well. So having that portion of general business 1, the 8 acres on the side, does allow for that corner, that primary corner on the thoroughfare for general business 1, but also some residential as well.
Robin Miga, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. I was the case manager over that former application that you guys saw. So I did want to just provide a specific answer. So before, that request was related to a plan unit development. So they had requested a comprehensive plan amendment that was associated with the plan unit development. They had very specific development regulations that they were proposing, and that was the reason they were requested to apply for that CPA, because it was necessary for what they were proposing in their PUD. With them requesting straight zoning, the retail zoning district is compatible with the comprehensive plan without the CPA amendment. And so that's the reason that we've brought before you the retail zoning. There are many uses that are allowed in that zoning district by right. They are not, they vary from commercial districts or commercial uses, and some residential is allowed as well. But the difference is they're requesting to comply with our development regulations in that retail district.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the extra context there.
You ready for a motion?
Yeah.
Or you still thinking?
I was pondering for a second. I guess my only, I don't even want to call it a concern, comment is basically that I hope this is not a workaround for the same development under the same circumstances that it was before. I don't know that there's a straightforward answer to that, but I'm just sort of expressing that would be my concern here. For a straight zoning case, I totally get it, but knowing the context of the previous case and the issues that we had with that development.
What are the housing options that are available to retail?
For permitted by right, for retail and general business 1 is assisted living, live-work units, nursing homes, and then single-family attached, which is 3 or more townhomes. General business 1 does not allow for the single-family attached townhomes.
Okay.
If it's zoned retail, can it end up being 100% residential?
Technically, it is permitted, but that is allowed in the retail zoning district.
Any other comments or
Is that a
questions?
concern?
I mean, we had a lot of discussion last time, but I think since they're leaving the other side as GB1, that it'll be, the intent of the 2040 plan will be met. If they're splitting it, they're just gonna be splitting it in a different, they're carving up the pie a different way, to still achieve the same goal of the 2040 plan and the plan of the developer. I think it's actually a pretty smart solution.
Okay. Motion to close discussion?
Yep, I'll entertain a motion in a second on that.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
That was a motion to approve or to close discussion?
I'm sorry, to approve. We had already closed
Okay.
the public comment.
Doesn't
right.
change my vote. I was just confused.
Okay. All right, meeting is adjourned at 8:31. Thank you.
Thanks.